Hello, and welcome to Waves, podcast by Kleinet. Hey everyone, Mr. Abdullah here with Vivek Patrai, and today we have a special guest for you. It's my brother, my very own brother.
Very own brother?
My own.
Yeah.
Junaid Ahmed, master podcaster of Hacks and Hobbies. I've been doing it for a while, and there
There is. You can see
I
him
could
now.
give you some video.
So he's gonna be talking to us about UI and podcasting and growing a business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have no idea about how to grow a business because that would be good knowledge to know myself.
All right, definitely UI. So if you could just give us a little bit, introduction about yourself, Junaid. From your side, like what you do, and then what's your specialty, and how long have you been doing podcasts? Because we know you've been doing podcasts for a long time.
I started in the UI space. Well, I am a tech enthusiast. I even started a blog back in the days called Techno Junkie. But it's let's start with this from the start. I got introduced to technology very early in my life, and I think the first computer we had was a 92, 93, can't remember, but it was a 46. Super fascinated. We had it at home.
Was it command prompt?
It was not a command prompt. Is a command line process, but it was a 486. It was not a Commodore. It was a 46 CPU with like 4 gigs of RAM and maybe 2 gigs of RAM. I can't remember. But I was just so fascinated by computers and technology that I just kept digging myself deeper and deeper into it. And when I finally moved to the US, I actually worked at a computer shop where I assembled computers. So technology is just something that just truly fascinated me. And around the same time, since I was on the computer all the time, AOL I had just gotten access to America Online. I started designing flyers.
Oh wow.
Like published flyers for my uncle's business. And at the time he was selling Islamic books at mosques and whatnot. So I was like, hey, let's make a flyer. So I made my flyer using Microsoft Word. And Microsoft Word, dude. This is before Photoshop. This is around the time Photoshop 1.0. You had to pay like big bucks to get Photoshop, but everybody had Microsoft Office, so I was like, why not? So using Microsoft Word, I designed these graphics, and it was a lot of fun. And we got some traction, and then I jumped into designing websites using Publisher.
Publisher?
Yeah, Microsoft Publisher, and then finally moved into using Front Page. And then as I learned more and more, got into Dreamweaver, and I would just develop in Dreamweaver and HTML, CSS, and all that stuff, and a lot of fun using a lot of tables back then. We used tables for all of our layouts. I mean, now you have divs and whatnot, right? And you're using the display and CSS to make sure everything looks good. But back then I was using crazy stuff. So that's a little background. Now, how did I get into podcasting? Podcasting's been as being in the space of technology, and at one point in my life I was in a band and I was singing, so got into audio and audio production and editing and whatnot. It's like, well, sound is so fascinating. And so back in 2012, myself and my brother-in-law and my cousin, we essentially created a podcast called Still Brewing It. We managed to publish, I think, 4 episodes, and you can still find them on iTunes and anywhere that podcast is available. and it was super fascinating. We would talk about, I think, iPhone 4 at that time, and we talked about the current technology. It was just really, really exciting.
So what happened to that?
It's still around. So the reason we couldn't continue is, as you know, I was living at the time in Colorado. My cousins were in California. So any time that we could get together and really talk was midnight my time, 9 p.m. their time, and sometimes, or 10 p.m. their time. And because we have kids, it's really hard to get that time available to be able to, create. And then we didn't have tools, like easier tools that are available today.
Right.
For example, last year when I started my podcast, I simply started using it or started recording it on my iPhone. And I just use a microphone or a headset to record the audio. And while I was driving home, the first podcast, I was driving home from work, and the first episode was all about the queen bee. And the reason I jumped into podcasting was my colleagues would tell me, hey, how come you have a new hobby every week? It's like,
You did have a new hobby every week?
well, it seemed like it because I would talk about a lot of things, photography, videography, beekeeping, cycling, racing cars or RC cars, and computer motion graphics, movie making, like you name it.
Next time we meet, we need to talk about the beekeeping thing you just told
Involved. Yeah, absolutely. So that's
and then you found you decided to go with podcasting.
yeah, so I was like, I've been wanting to do podcasting, and around the same time, I think it was like February of last year, when a friend of mine reached out to me and he said, hey, I want to start podcasting. I was like, okay, I can help you with that. So I went back into the mode of researching and figured out and found all these new things that were happening in that podcasting space. I had him set up, and then I discovered Anchor, and the rest is history. I would record every day, every other day, and had almost weekly podcast episodes. And I never promoted any of the episodes. I've just recorded just for my own sake. And it's out there whenever if somebody wants to listen to it, they're happy to come and jump and check it out. Then later last year, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how can I monetize from this podcasting. And monetizing is not easy, especially if you don't have a following.
Right.
And as Seth Godin says, and if you don't know who Seth Godin is, well, you need to do a little bit research. This guy is the pioneer behind internet marketing.
Right.
He is a pioneer behind.
Is that the guy who wrote the book called "This Is the Marketing"?
Yes, this is marketing.
Right. This is marketing.
Amazing guy, right? So recently he published an article, and he blogs every single day.
Really?
Wow.
Every single day for the past 40 plus years, he's written a blog post.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's content, man. That's where SEO, when they talk about SEO, that's what they're talking about. You look up any article in the space that he's talking about, his posts are up top on the top.
Wow.
So he says, well, podcasting is literally like blogging. Instead of you sitting down and writing a text, now you're talking. And you can essentially convert that audio into a text file, because we have that technology now, and that's your blog post, or that's a transcription to your podcast. So that ranks up high there with SEO.
But
I think recently
you'd have to edit that, right? Because the podcast is not.
Of course, yeah. You edit it, but then you can also say, hey, this is the transcribed version of the text. So anything, it's then understandable by whoever viewing. Plus, it'll give you a higher ranking in Google or SEO wise. What's happening? So
Makes so much
easier too.
Yeah, it does. It does. And just want to add a few more things here to the advantage of podcasts. This is what I heard from Gary Vee, especially if you make a video podcast. What he was saying was that now people are so much into like listening to what you say, they'll just play your podcast while taking a walk in the park.
Yep.
Or driving to somewhere, right? So they will just listen to it. And the next thing he said you could do is that you can have short clips, like take a 30 seconds or 50 seconds or 1 minute clip of your podcast, and you can use that as a post in a social media, right?
Yep.
So not only the podcast is engaging to your followers, you can also create different contents out of those podcasts. And I see so many big marketers are doing something similar to what he said, and that's why I think the significance of podcasts is getting higher and higher, because of all the, right? Do you agree?
Absolutely. I'm a big follower of Gary Vee's content and what he's saying. The other motivator behind me starting the podcast was the book Crushing It. I don't know if you've read it. Crush It was his first book that came out in 2009. And Crushing It was the next book that he released last year. And in it says, nobody is going to give you on a platter, hey, here's the podcast you've been looking for. You've got to do yourself.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I'm not going to do this podcast, I can't be waiting on a third person, a second person to be like, hey, let's do a podcast together. It's not going to happen. I got to do it on my own. So I was like, you know what? I can't find a co-host. But I don't need a co-host. But when I'm talking about what I'm talking about, I just need to go and do it. And hence, here we are. So then, that's the power of podcasting, right? There are a ton of communities that you can also... So, what Gary Vee is saying is great. It's perfect. He creates a ton of content. He has a huge team to create these other pieces of content. Now, a lot of the times, if you don't have a huge following, sure, you created a little clip to get engagement going, and your followers are like, all right, we're just going to check this out. And if the content doesn't speak to them, they're just going to watch that clip and walk on and scroll by. So sure, you can post stuff on social media on your podcast, but that's not the primary place where listeners go to listen. The primary place that a listener is located is in their podcasting app. So if you are a guest on another podcast, you're like, oh, I'm listening to this podcast, and the guest is talking about stuff that I'm so passionate about. Let me go and check out that guest. I'm already in the app. I'm already listening, right? When people are scrolling through, say, Instagram, say, LinkedIn, say, Twitter, and they see a video clip, great. They watch the video clip and they're on their way to the next video clip or next post, because that's their primary function. You want to remove the friction as much as possible. And so that's what's happening with the podcasting area and how you can gain more audience. I'm actually taking a course on from Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. And he talks about how to get more and more followers and people listening to your podcast. Do you have an email list? Send out an email to all the people that are following your podcast, that are listening to your business and what's happening in your business area. Reach out to these people. Email list is the place to be, because having followers on Facebook, Instagram is great when you have content that they can engage on that platform. But say these platforms go away, those followers go away as well. But if you have an email list, you have access to them. So
I took a little off the topic. Before we got here, you were talking about how to monetize the podcast, and we were talking about Seth Godin. Was he able to help you monetize your podcast, or how did that go?
Well, monetizing your podcast takes a while. You've got to build a following first, and that takes time. One thing that one thing that you can do, since you're let's say you're in the space of Facebook ads, or you're in the space of web development, you want to go find communities that are talking about this. And in that community, you say, hey, we'd love to interview, and especially you want to go and look for people who are running those groups, the admins of those groups. And if those admins have never been on a podcast, this is a new experience for them, and they're going to share the heck out of your podcast when you interview them.
Right.
And then, so there's a ton of stuff in there. I can send you. I think he's got a little video on YouTube. He's got a ton of videos on YouTube, but there's many ways. I'm still learning from him. I haven't implemented half the things that I've listened about so much. But yeah, that's crazy. It's a crazy world we're living in, especially the things that we're able to do right now. It's pretty amazing.
What are the hurdles you're running into when podcasting and trying to increase your followership or engagement and all that? Because that applies to most businesses. They're trying to increase their viewership or
the followers, right?
Right. So what's your hurdle in podcasting or your world?
My specific hurdle is having enough time. I've got my hands in way too many things. I've minimized some of the things, like editing the podcast. I hand off that to somebody else, and they edit the podcast, they put the tracks together, they put the intro and the outro, and the file is ready for me. The next step I want to do is schedule this post so that it goes out on every Tuesday or every Wednesday. And then I've got to strategize to inform all of my listeners or all of my email list, like, hey, we have a new episode out, and this is the little blurb. We got to talk to this guy, and he talks about blah, 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 and the episode's going to drop today. You basically tell them, hey, something's happening. And you'll see that example. Whenever you check your email, you'll get emails from other podcasters or other people that are trying to get you to listen to their podcast.
Right.
So you look what other people are doing, and you try to mimic that. But then you also want to bring out what's so unique about your podcast versus somebody else who's been doing it for a very long time.
I see. Yeah, so that's because we just started our podcast too, right? Fifth episode, and there was an essay, sixth episode, right? There's an essay we read before we started podcast called 1,000 True Followers. Yeah, it's a quite, because they say that if you have 1,000 true followers, to not like 1,000 followers is not hard, but getting 1,000 true followers is quite quite a task, right?
Yes.
So if you could do that, they say that you could have an income to sustain your certain lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that would be our target, and I know there's a lot of hurdles in order to get to the 1,000 true followers, but what I believe is that if you start having a value content,
exactly,
proper marketing system in place, the 1,000 true followers are not that far away.
It's not that far away. Especially, for example, I've interviewed over 60 guests on my podcast. And one thing that I haven't done is reach out to those guests and tell them, hey, dude, share the episode with your followers. Right? I've asked them in passing, meaning when I send them the emails about confirming and their appointments, that we're talking tomorrow kind of thing. But what I need to do is I need to do a follow-up email and be like, hey, this is what's going on, your podcast episode is killing it, share it with your audience.
I see.
Right.
So there's many different ways that you can ask people to follow your stuff and do that kind of thing.
I see.
potential out there, and just taking advantage of that is so crucial, because we have every single opportunity to push ourselves ahead and come out on top.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so before we run out of time, I was trying to talk about UI as well.
Yeah.
let's jump into it real quick. So how, like, tell us a little bit more about, I think, the importance of having a proper user interface, right? Because what I see is that is like a bread and butter to any online business you have right now. Because if the customer, if they do not like the user interface,
Yeah.
they will not. If people are so quick to judge websites or apps right now, if it's not like following, like it's not easy, if they can't.
There needs to be a flow.
There needs to be a flow.
It doesn't flow.
Right.
People don't want to figure things out. The app needs to like direct them in a certain way that they don't have to think too much on figuring out what to do. Am I right there?
Absolutely. And that's mainly because not every website is designed for everyone. Right. So you want to make your design as bold as possible to scare away the people that you don't want as clients. If somebody comes to your website and they can't figure out half the stuff that you're doing, you don't want that person to be your client. You want somebody who is smart enough to navigate your website to then hire you, because then they know exactly who they're looking for. So it's okay to piss people off. Like, if you don't piss off people, then you're not doing something right. You're trying to please everybody, and that's the problem. That's the problem. This world, we're trying to please everyone, and we end up not pleasing anybody at all, because now you're including everybody. It's that story tale when this father and son, they're taking this donkey, and the son is sitting on the donkey, and the father's sitting, walking next to him, and people are like, oh my God, look at that son, he's so arrogant, he's not letting his dad sit on the donkey. So they're like, fine, we're gonna switch places, and now the people are like, oh my God, look at his dad, he's making his son walk around on there. And then they both are walking next to the donkey, and they're like, oh my God, these guys are stupid, why aren't you just sitting on the donkey? Then they're both sitting on the donkey, and then they're like, oh my God, these guys are killing this animal by sitting on top of it. So the father and son, they end up putting the donkey on top of their heads, and they end up, basically, the donkey fell over in the river when they were crossing the river. So there's no pleasing everybody. So you got to define, where do you want to be? Who is your target audience? Just like when I was talking to Abdullah when I was over, he was saying, we are doing these ads for... I know I went off topic about the UI, because again, when you are designing the user interface, you got to know who your target audience is. What's the persona? What's the avatar of this person? What is he doing on a daily basis? Does he have enough time to sit in front of the computer to be able to consume the information you're doing? Or is this person on the go all the time? So what kind of audience are you looking for to convert? And that's where it comes down to, when you're just defining an ad, or when you're designing the application, when you're designing the interface of a website, of a mobile app, you got to look at all of those things. And then what is the user flow? When your persona is at your website, for example, take an example for like Carfax.com or Autotrader.com. They know exactly who's going to come here. They want somebody who's looking to buy a car. And once you're finally on looking at a car, like, the first thing is search cars for sale, right? So you put in your car model that you're looking for, and then you go right into it. It's right on top. And then towards the bottom of the page, there's new car reviews and whatnot. So there's people that are gonna be like, hey, I know exactly what I'm looking for, just show me that. So they have the search box on top. But if you scroll down, then they have their people writing articles about, hey, this is what you need to look at. This is car news. This is the new cars coming up. These are the top cars for 2019, blah, blah, blah. So you got to look at all of that content that's on that page and which content is designed for which type of persona that you have defined.
Right.
Yeah.
Take those examples, and then I'm sure that whatever you're trying to do, there's at least 1,000 people also doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
Look at what they're doing, mimic it, and then add your flair to it, add your masala in it,
Right.
and then you got your flavor.
Only thing that it's hard to mimic or is that you don't know what is working, right? Because even when you throw ad, we throw like 6-7 of them, and only 1 or 2 of them is worked, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if somebody, let's say, is some guy threw 7 ads, right, and then we mimic all the ads that are not working,
Yeah,
then we will get no results as well. So how do
Absolutely.
you know like which ad is working or what system is working? How do you figure
Well,
that out?
well, first of all, you got to have a system in place that allows you to do A/B testing.
Okay.
Right. So if you have A/B testing, multivariant testing that Google has, Google gives you access to, you can use a tag manager. You can set up multivariant testing, and start with one ad, make few variants of it, and see which ad performs well. And then a lot of times when you're using these multivariant, all your different variant is part of that same ad. Google is displaying a different ad and getting that feedback. So then you have a way of analytics to look at, like, oh, okay, this ad is performing well. Let's tweak that. Go from there. That kind of thing. So you gotta have analytics behind all of your ads. I'm sure with Facebook Ad Manager, there's a lot of analytics that they give you as well,
Yeah.
and that's why they have that for you the ability to be super narrow on who gets to see that ad. The more targeted you are, the less money you're spending, and the more feedback you're getting on how your ads are performing.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. Right.
Completely agree. So this going back to the UI thingy.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the importance of it, and also we talked about that you shouldn't design it to please everyone, right? It should be a process of qualifying your clients, because if you try to be people pleaser, you end up pleasing no one.
Exactly.
So now,
Exactly.
but let's say I know my target audience. I know who is my qualified clients. How would you what are the main points that I need to consider to make my UI more friendlier to those targeted audience?
That's $1 million question, my friend. I don't have the answer for that.
I guess that's everyone is trying to find out.
That's what everybody's trying to find out.
That's the struggle.
That is a struggle. There is something that I learned. I forgot the name of the writer, but there's this book called Branding.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of it? Storytelling branding or something.
Sure.
I forgot the name of it. And so they talk about the websites, especially how to make a website, not in terms of designs and layouts, but what it should do. So they have proposed something called grunt test, right? Grunt test meaning every time a new customer visits your website, within 5 seconds, they should be able to know who you are, what kind of service you provide,
Yeah.
and how to purchase that service, right? That's a 5-second rule.
Yeah.
So the grunt meaning they should see that. Even a caveman should understand it and do the grunt.
Yeah.
So that's how they say grunt test. And the reason behind that is now people don't want to burn too much calorie to figure out who you are. It's like the responsibility.
It's a friction. Yeah.
Right. The responsibility lies in you, on you, I guess, to make your potential client understand
Yeah.
what you provide, rather than them
Having to figure it out.
figuring it out.
themselves, yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty interesting, and I think we kind of implemented it in our website too. And
Yeah.
most of our ads too, we run like that, and that's one of the reasons that we get very good results in so many of our
Nice. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I wanted to know more points like that, so we can implement.
Well, I definitely am not in that space at the moment to tell you what it is, right? I myself is working on getting my audience right or getting my avatar right. Like, who's my target audience? Like, I guess I get asked that question all the time. Like, who is it? Like, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. So the other thing that you could do is do research.
Right.
Who do you think is going to be the client that's gonna get you to the next step?
Uh-huh.
And that's where you go.
Research is key. Looking at existing businesses or people in that field and seeing who their persona is by seeing their followers. That gives you a good idea of who you can also target or similarly target for your own business.
You know, another great thing that I found, for example, is this was actually a YouTube video. It's like how to get more viewers or followers on your video. So you look at how many, what video has got the most views, and then look at what videos are showing up as the recommended videos on the side of yours.
Right.
You go to that channel and see which videos of theirs is doing the best. You take that video and make a better video with that same content, with your flair in it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And boom.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I think I agree with you, because now I have seen, like, YouTube is good at retargeting you with similar videos, right? So every week or every other day, I get something similar what I watched, especially motivation and marketing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they recommend me so many other videos that are similar. Sometimes they're better, sometimes they're not. But I see what you're saying, that because if there's a persona is used to watching this certain kind of video, they're most likely to watch a video that is similar to the video they're watching already.
Exactly, because they're interested not in the video, they're interested in the content that's part of that's in that video.
Right. Yeah, that should definitely help. Right.
Yeah, that can apply to anything.
Exactly. Apply to anything at all. My cousin the other day, or my brother-in-law, shared this video, and I watched this video. I was like, this is very interesting. The video was talking about the difference between synchronous and asynchronous technology. And it was part Hindi, part English. And so he's like, dude, bust out your Urdu and do your Urdu. And then I saw there's like 435,000 subscribers for that channel.
Wow.
And that just that one video is probably like 10 minutes long, had 43,000 views. I'm like, wow, if I could do the same video with better graphics and better pronunciation, I could probably get more hits. I don't know, but again, it all comes down to how much time do I have? The other thing that's recommended about creating content is create content in bulk. For example, one YouTuber that I follow, Vanessa Lau, she started her entrepreneur journey last year. She was able to create a course and make about $165,000 just by providing this course, but it took her 1 year to get it all down. She says that she creates 3 months worth of content in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So you pick out your topics, you bulk create all of the content, and then you set a schedule for them to go out. And then set up a marketing schedule next to it where as soon as your YouTube video goes live, you send out an email, you tweet it out, you share it on all the different pages. So you've got this marketing calendar set up essentially, and where you're telling people, hey, this is what we're talking about this week. What are you doing? And then so now that you've spent the time to create all the create all of the content, create all of the scheduling for this content.
Mhm.
All you got to worry about now is engaging with that audience when you get those feedback, when you
Right.
get those people tweeting and talking about your articles and coming to your website. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's, and I haven't had the chance to apply that for my own stuff.
Mhm.
Not yet, anyways. I need more time.
Yeah, because it's a lot of content
It's
with
a lot of
3 months
work, yeah.
worth. Of
It's a
content.
lot of work, and that's why you know, you guys are still better than me because now you're at least two people. I'm just one person, right? You guys can divide the load. You get, I have 24 hours, you have 48 hours to work
That's
on your business,
that's
right?
true.
So you get more out of that, and that's why they say two heads are better than one, or three bet, you know, because you're now using that same 24 hours, but now you're multiplying how many horses you have in the race.
But I think, yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they have the issue of being consistent,
Yeah.
because it does take that time and that effort and that scheduling and planning and everything. So
Yeah.
I really think that this is my belief, right? The number one reason people fail is they lack consistency.
yeah, so
Oh yeah, absolutely.
being on that,
Uh,
being either consistent or, like you said, bulk creating that content would really boost, their effectiveness,
right, right.
because it shows like, oh, you're
You're
out
always
there,
there.
you're
Yeah,
engaging your audience, you're um throwing your name out there.
yeah.
Exactly. The louder you are, the you know, the better your returns are, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, dude. Sorry, I'm a little distracted, but
It's it's
um, that's
it's all right. It was a lot of good information today, especially podcast.
and the reason I'm a little distracted is this guy right here. Oh,
What is that?
Ooh, what's going on there?
this is my DSLR.
Oh wow.
So this thing came off. So I opened it up and I screwed this back on. But now I'm trying to can't remember which screw goes where. I'll figure it out. I've done it before.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll figure it out.
But yeah, it was really good chatting with you guys. Thank you so much for bringing me on. You know, I look forward to your continued success.
Thank you.
And yeah, man, check out anchor.fm. All of the episodes that you already have on YouTube, you can essentially put it up on Anchor
Right.
and tell them, hey, here's the first episode, second episode, and you can even tell it, okay, this is, you know, this was published in the past, so you can, or either what you can also do is you can say, hey, you've got 6 episodes in, and you can continue recording additional episodes. Set up your Anchor account so Anchor can go out and start putting, you know, start the process of getting you on Spotify and Google and Apple,
Uh-huh.
and then set up a launch date. Hey, we're launching our podcast on this specific date,
Mm-hmm.
and tell everybody that's in your network, all your followers, people. So now they're anticipating. So you basically set a launch date, just like
Right.
people set up a launch date for their website. You set up a launch date for your podcast,
Yeah.
and you know, tell people, hey, we talked to this, but we're talking about this stuff. We're talking about this stuff, kind of like that.
Yeah.
So then now people are anticipating, like, all right, can't wait to hear from these guys. This is going to be exciting.
Uh-huh.
And then you say, you know, it's a weekly podcast. So then your 6 episodes, you're already covered for 6 weeks. And during that time, you continue to record more episodes. And now that's where consistency comes in.
Yeah. I
I
agree.
at one point, I had 45 episodes recorded, and it
Wow.
just didn't have the time to edit them and publish them.
Uh-huh.
So finally, I ended up publishing all of them 5 at a time every week.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm kind of like silent on the podcast because I don't have any content. But I'm working on getting guests, and I think I have like 7 episodes recorded so far.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to relaunch the podcast, and relaunch the marketing and getting all that email stuff in place. I have all the stuff. I just need some time to like really have a clear head. And I haven't had that opportunity because when you have kids, you only have so much time, and then
Days just fly.
your day flies and your time flies and your thoughts disappear.
I mean, what also we can do is that we'll put the link to Junaid's podcast.
Hacks and Hobbies.
Yeah, Hacks and Hobbies down here. So,
definitely check it out.
Check it out.
Packed with content.
Yeah, as I said, he made like 45 episodes of hundreds of episodes, right? And then, so just a little bit, like, just want a little bit more about like what you talk about technology.
So on the podcast Hacks and Hobbies, I talk to my guests, anywhere from authors, entrepreneurs, other podcasters, other hobbyists, and actors and directors and producers. And I talk about their journey. How did they get started?
Right.
So we're focusing on the journey part, and then we go a little bit into what their hobbies are and what's their favorite movies and stuff like that. So that's some of the stuff that I'm fascinated about. So get to learn about those things from them.
Okay, that's good. So we'll put the link down below. Check it out. I'm sure it's way better than ours.
It is.
If you're listening to us, you're gonna enjoy his. So thank you, Junaid.
Thank you
so much for giving us your time.
Thanks, bro. Yeah,
hopefully
absolutely,
we can do
man.
another podcast soon.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you. Good day.
Right.